This is core concepts. The idea is for people to come and talk to you, lecture about things that you probably are not going to get at your university or at your church or most places. And I think that everybody who's been in these classes or been to core concepts can tell you it's something different than anything they've seen somewhere else. All right, and they're coming from all over. And today we have two lecturers. Georg Breckmann, the author of Contact and Cosmology, was scheduled, but Isákaun was coming into town at the same time. They're closely connected. Did I pronounce that right?
Schleppfϋrmann.
Schleppfyrmann. I slipped up on Schlepp.
Yeah, you missed a letter.
Yeah. Isákaun is here with us from Denver, in those environs anyway, in the mountains around there. And so she's going to talk to you first, and then she has to fly low to the airport to be there by 5:30 because she has a 6:30 flight, and to get her there. So, and then George will carry on from there. So the first part will be Isákaun. And Isákaun has been, we did a taping an hour with her on the Bookman show Friday morning, and she shined like a star. And hopefully all of you will be able to see that. It'll be on Comcast Cable Network 9:30 Saturday night, but we're also taping it, and it'll be up on internet television, and you'll be able to watch it there too. Same with the core concepts lectures. They go up on internet television, and they go to the Blog Talk Radio show core concepts on Sunday night. They'll be staggered. They'll be coming in a little bit later than what you're getting them live here. Okay. Isákaun is featured in this book in about 3 chapters. Two of them. And we're working on a book for her that'll be called My Soul Reclamation. Okay? And just, I can tell you from the television show and from some of what's in this, it ought to be very interesting, and you guys are going to be looking forward to that. Isákaun, welcome to Core Concepts.
Thank you very much.
Just go right ahead.
Thank you
Turn it
so
over
much.
to you.
And even stars need nuclear fuel. So
Yeah.
This makes me want to digress, but an allergy doctor said I could have coffee and chocolate. That was all I could ever have.
So that's a mocha, right?
Yeah, it might be something else, I don't know. It's got sugar, I can't. Now, what we look forward to bringing to you is Teutonic theology, cosmology, theology. It's not like churches, it's completely different. It's an old pagan religion. It's a way of viewing the cosmos, viewing the world around us, viewing ourselves, our lives, the spans of our lives. And what I have is a 6-section presentation, if we have time. And I'm hoping that Mr. Breckmann will take one section, I'll take another, and we'll just kind of alternate, because I think that's more interesting than listening to one person. In this book, the chapters 9 and 10 are about my own shamanic training. And from very early an age, I was trained as a Norse shaman. I have a lot to learn. I probably have a couple more lifetimes before I'm as good as I want to be, or as well studied as I should be. But what I did is I took, we have old texts like the Eddas, the Havamal, the Voluspa, very old things from Frisian and from Old Norse, from Icelandic things. And the concepts are not necessarily hard for us. I'm making it us, but the people may be smarter or easier to pick it up. They're just different words, different terms, different ways of looking at things. So for my own sense, I had a kind of a resistance to learning for a while because I was locked into a certain mindset that I think most people have. And to just go into anything that's a different cosmology, unless it's like so far away from you that you're just like studying, somebody who could never be. But it's like, no, if this is mine and it might relate to me, it just took a while for me to get there. So what I did is I put together an outline of what are some of the key points of Teutonic religion for today. And I didn't put it in the words like you would study in one of those ancient texts, nor did I put it in with all points that we're going to have a radio show also on Fridays, which will go, it's 1 hour with Mr. Renford. And what we'll do is go into a concept like heaven, or hell, or fate threads, or, just different things. But then we'll telescope down, more scholarly than this would be. This is more just to give an overview. And I wanted to start off with this meditation. The sacred things to me are the runes, the save, and then these ancient texts. And the save is a series of cognitive and advisory paradigms, we call them, that relate to life. And some will say worlds come and go, and another will say selves come and go. Any one of them doesn't give you a whole truth, but they all give you some truth. And this is what I picked for today. Without ideas is drawn by the fates and inner sight to experience. The warrior invents in every instance, unencumbered by thought. Without knowing, everything shines new, every moment. Without knowing, all is lived, not thought into being. Without knowing, all is fresh, and the day's paths to stream, yet is filled with surprise, with wonder. Patient to the hunter his pursuit, quiet treading. The fisher folk of silent waves and sun, on water sea. So they're just meditating and seeing on the water. The warrior, he by careful movement given, invents each moment, invents his life anew. And in a sense, as we grow, we become warriors, and I believe in being priests and magicians, that we can actually make our worlds better, just change things for the better. We have a choice, and we can alter the worlds around us. And as priests, we bring in goodness, not necessarily our own energies, but the energies of the sun, the worlds around us, the inspirations that come in. And I'll start on that. I'm going to partly read it and partly speak. This is the outline for a lecture on Teutonic life and cosmology. Our ancient cosmologies are rich and complex. This abbreviated list is a few helpful key points outlined for this era. This describes who we are if we are permitted to live naturally in this unnaturally overpopulated, over-controlled world. And in our era, we don't hear a lot about Teutonic things, or especially the older Teutonic cosmologies. The first section is the gods and our relationship to them. We do believe in more than one God. We do believe that we're not all one. I'm not the same as any one of you, although we share common interests. We breathe the same air. We walk on the same earth. We work together. We're different. If we were all the same, we wouldn't be ourselves. So we are ourselves. We have three families of gods: the Aesir, the Vanir, and the Nornir. The easiest one for me to describe are the Nornir. And at the head of the Nornir are three sisters: Urdur, Skuld, and Verdandi, past, present, and future, or past, becoming, and future. And they're just weaving threads that interconnect us, threads that are fate, threads that we come in with, threads that we have chosen to change or to work with, and the effects of our choices going forward in time. Brian Bates has a book that I love called The Web of Weird, W-Y-R-D, and that talks about the Nornir sometimes coming as spiders, sometimes coming as bees, weavers, you know, but in a sense it's the same. They'll meet, there's sometimes a spiritual journey where someone will meet the Nornir, and they may meet them as bees, or they may meet them as something else. But I love thinking of it makes time organic. It's something different. The ICER, we have, well, the ICER and the Vanir are closer to nature. We have the storms, the wind. The wind is our high god, Odin. I mean, it's like, to me, just wonderful and strange. But the wind is the one that's the high god. He travels with thought and memory always on him. Those aren't gods, they're just ones that he has accompanying him. We have sagas. Saga is a god. She's the keeper of our history. And we may go to school and learn all these things that we're taught, but Saga keeps the history. She also keeps our personal history. So there's times something's happened to us, we don't remember it, or we can't remember it, or we haven't been told truthfully about ourselves. But the truth is always written in our cells, in our bodies, in our energetic bodies, and it's kept by the goddess Saga. Very old goddess, appeared recently to someone I haven't met yet, but I look forward to meeting. Had red hair, a very old, wise lady. Heimdall is our god who keeps the rainbow bridge. And the rainbow bridge protects the gods from all of the things that could harm their world. And it's guarded by the whitest, the lightest of the gods. And a lot of these things sound different, but eventually the whole cosmology works together to be something I find very beautiful. And it can go from a big level into a littler level, you know, where we keep the rainbow bridge of ourselves. A difference is the gods do not ask us to ritually kill animals, drink blood, or give our souls away. They really ask us to be in possession of our souls, to connect to the earth, not to make binding commitments that give it away. They really want us ourselves. And this is just our cosmology. Our cosmology is never for all of other people's. But we share it so that if it helps others, that's wonderful. It's not a cosmology that says we're universal, we're the only one, and this is right. We don't even argue over what's right. We refine our knowledges. The gods are not one, they're individuals. And if one meets them or studies them, they have different job functions, different qualities, different things they like to do, different ways you get to know them. In the older pagan times, for example, I wouldn't pray to Heimdall to grow my fields. Heimdall's keeping the rainbow bridge with his white fire. But to grow my fields, I'd pray to Frey. He's the god of growth. If I wanted to protect the forests, I'd go to Vidar. He protects the primeval forest, as well as our kinship with it. So it's just, they're not the same, they're just, and it's not like you have to know, okay, now who do I go to for this? It's, you know, that can drive you nuts. Like individual humans, we believe the gods are evolving too. They're not perfect. But I couldn't imagine anything better. I mean, my own ability to imagine, they're well beyond anything I could imagine is good. But they're still just working through the same problems I am at different levels. And each day, we're different. Sometimes we're stuck in a static reality. It's like, okay, today, this is truth. But tomorrow, it might not be truth because I've changed and the situation set has changed. And that's not saying there's no truth or we just believe everything. It's just saying there's change. The gods appear to our folk who wish to know them, and today at their own initiative, the gods sometimes appear when called upon. So they have a choice. It's like you say, please fix this thing. You know, please do something, or please show yourself. And they decide, they kind of hear it really fast. I mean, faster than you could imagine even thinking it. But how they manifest and what they do is their choice. Kind of different, because I'm used to not that way. Our gods are very old. I have no idea how old is. But I mean, they're very, very old. Although they can appear quite young, they can appear ageless. And I don't know if George wants to take the second section, or I should keep going.
George, you got it? Okay.
Sure, thanks.
Now, George Breckmann, that we've talked about, I mentioned to you him and this book, Contacting Cosmology, and he's going to be doing a sort of on and off with Isákaun on this. George?
Hi, I'm Georg Breckmann. Thanks for being here. I guess the next topic would be how we believe in direct knowing. Each individual can learn directly from experience. We don't think that our fates or sacred information is communicated to us through dogma. We feel that we learn it through our experience, and rather than necessarily reading tea leaves or tarot cards or yarrow sticks, we learn to interpret our experience as we look for omens. We look to interpret what's being brought to us and what we've encountered in our own lives. That's the highest form that we know of divination, and we eventually teach that to people who are adepts, people who come into the path. We do not feel that we need intermediaries or experts to do it for us. There are classes of priesthood and doers within us, it's true. There are the Berind are healers. There are the Yitkar, who are the priests, magicians, and sometimes warriors. There are the Godai and Giya, the priests and priestesses, who work with individual groups or kindreds. And a Hof, we never worshipped in churches as you would think of them. We didn't cut down forests to build temples, as the Mediterranean people did, or as the Semitic peoples did. Rather, we respected nature, and we would worship in an open clearing in a meadow or in a sacred place that was outdoors usually. You know, certainly the weather in Scandinavia didn't exactly lend itself to doing that year-round. We tried to do it whenever possible that way, sometimes even building fires around a periphery to have a space that was relatively comfortable in which to get together. When we speak of worship too, I guess, and we talk about the ways that we learn, we're used to thinking of praying, and praying kind of goes like this. Wah, I'm a little child, you parent, yada, I need something. What can you give me? I need a new job. I need a new house. My boyfriend's mean, fix him. And you know, the way we think about prayer is entirely different. We actually call it the Schleppfŷrmann, which means literally fetch talking. In other words, I'm fetching part of our reality, I'm kind of reporting on it to them. It's nothing but communication. It is not asking for something. If I'm supposed to ask for anything at all I'm allowed to ask for as an Odinic priest is for myself to be more clear in seeing that I may give that vision to others, more powerful as a healer that I may pass on that healing to others. I'm not allowed to ask anything for myself. That would be narcissism rather than spirituality. And really what we see in many other paths is what I would call spiritual materiality. In other words, we've even heard it referred to as bank account. I'm going to put something in my bank so I'll have it in heaven. You know, how many of you have heard that in the church meeting? Yeah, right, okay. We can't in any way relate to that. I think I had a good sense to leave my phone out in the car. Good. That's your worst nightmare, is to stand up and speak and have your phone. I saw it happen in front of a group full of people. My son was at the Honor Society induction a couple of years ago at the University of Alabama. The speaker came in from Washington, D.C. She was from National Chapter. She was speaking. Oh, poor lady. I mean, in front of like 1,000 people. Bad timing. I'm glad that wasn't me. But anyway, we think of it as just asking for ways to improve ourselves, ways to move ourselves forward, that we can be more effective here in dealing with others and defending ourselves and the planet and uplifting. And you might say, well, what's the overall gist? What is Asatru all about? Well, it's about evolution. It's not about getting into heaven necessarily. I'm not sure we go with that concept. We do know that there are different places that we go in the afterlife if we don't reincarnate. And reincarnation is certainly a thing that happens to most of us. We're right back here to work on something. Well, you see, we don't think of humanity as passive. We think of humans as having a choice. In our traditions, we speak of when you pass, the first thing that happens, and you find echoes of this in popular literature, but not in the sacred writings of other religions, except those of India. Because why? They have the same root as the Indo-Aryans right after the cataclysms of about 1800 BC occurred, and the lands off of the coast of what is today Denmark and Holland sank. What then was called Atland, or the lowlands. When these sank, what is today called Helgoland, or Holy Land, this area sank. This huge civilization was there, and it didn't go immediately, it went slowly under, and this was actually the origin of Plato's Atlantis account. In fact, if you followed his sailing directions, as the Royal Geographic Society did in 1954, it didn't take them to Bimini and Bahamas, it didn't take them anywhere else, it took them right around the Straits of Gibraltar, right up the coast of Europe, and right to Frisia, because Frisia was a world power, it was an empire at that time. And when the Frisians' homeland went under, submerged slowly over several days, they got on ships, they vacated, and they made a long trip through the German culture area, through the Triskland, what in those days was the home of the Germans, and kept going southward. Some of them settled in Persia and became the Farsi, some of them settled in India and became the Aryans. Arya simply meant noble caste of India. They took with them the following: the Danubians, which were the sacred physical practices, which is why I can still work out with my 23-year-old Special Forces son at 64, which then become yoga. They took with them the spirituality, which then later becomes the Hindu faith. If you look at the early books, you find the Rig Veda in Sanskrit, and you find the Rig Stela in Old Norse. And guess which is older? Yes. You find it written in runes way, way, way back there, before the dawn of Indian civilization. So the two merge. The Dravidian culture meets the Norse culture. From it proceeds the Hindi faith as we have it today. Later from that faith branches off Buddhism. You know, but to get back to where we're at. So what we learn is the purpose is to evolve. And as we evolve, we can't hold on to anger, we can't hold on to narcissism. We have to refine ourselves so that we become ourselves, more godlike while we're here, more of what we can be, live out our human potential, and evolve our own capabilities. Because it's all about knowing and seeing. It's rather open-ended. And if we do that, we properly affect our future evolution, whether it's in this planet or not. And we recognize in our faith you could be reincarnated anywhere, not just here. You know, kind of stuck with this little box that we have. Penal colony or wherever it is. Alex Jones says it's a penal colony in prisonplanet.com, but he may be right, I don't know. Occasionally we can all think that. Anyway, we learn directly. We're taught by nature. We have various fragments of our faith that Christians did not manage to burn, like the Oluspa, Havamal, the sagas, many of the sagas, the Aralindo book, which is a very interesting work. I don't know if Francie brought a copy, but we have a couple of handouts here if anybody's interested in following up. The Aralindo book is actually the oldest book in the Western world. It started being compiled about 2250 BC. It was a chronicle of the Parisian people. And it takes them all the way from the sinking of Atlan to India, and some of them coming back, and the settling of the Eastern Mediterranean. We are each taught by the fates, including our own individual Hamia. Let me explain Hamia. At your birth, in our theology, we are taught you have given to you by the sisters of fate, present, past, and future, if you will, in English, or the Dandi and Stud in Norse. And these names, by the way, echo in English, although they tried to stamp out pagan more. It actually infiltrated modernity. When you say the name Friday, you are speaking of Freyja, the goddess of love and magic. When you say Thursday, you are speaking of the name of Thor, whose day it is. When you speak of Odin's Day, the High One, Odin, or Wotan in Old English. These names are embedded in Suna, Sunday, Suna, the goddess of the sun. There's also a god of the sun, Walnut, who is kind of equivalent to Apollo, god of healing arts, the male part of that. So all these have their correspondences that come to us in modernity, but these all have their roots in great antiquity. And so as we follow this chain, we realize that part of it was not completely submersed. So we have these fragments left to us. And in the Orlando book, we find out about this great migration and this very ancient history coming forward in the future. And then we have the cognitive paradigms of Save. The Save are produced much, much later, around, we think, 400 to 500 AD. And in the Save, the whole of Europe has not yet been consumed by the Christians. You still have a few pagan communities, and this is being written in one of them. And it is a series of cognitive meditations. When we think of meditation, what do we think of? First thing we think of is, I've got to get rid of myself, I've got to chuck thinking. Well, this is a Western approach to meditation, so it's quite unique in all the world. It's the only meditation which says we're going to meditate through attuning ourselves to a specific thought. And this thought is a very big, all-encompassing thought, and when we really say it a few times, dwell on it a few times, not like a mantra, it throws us into big existential questions. And as you do this, you start to get intuitive answers. It's a really spooky process, quite interesting. And everybody has a different effect from it. One fellow I loaned a copy to, buying it later, the researcher and author Henry Stevens wrote me that he said, well, I'm not going to read it here for a while. And I wrote back, why? He said, because I've been staying awake every night, but I'm not awake. I'm working lucidly in another world, and it's very interesting. So I wake up and I'm bloody tired from all that I'm exploring and all that I'm seeing. I said, okay, I hear you, dude. So he's going to do it a little less frequently, you know? But there it is. So these are some of the things that we're taught through. As far as practices, we have the runes, the practice of the runes, and of course they're being used kind of by the New Age movement, misused for just divination. They really worked for divination in the old days. They didn't disappoint anybody. Any New Agers tried to appropriate them, or Wiccans trying to appropriate them. It was not their purpose. The Wiccans had their own alphabet, which was Ogo. Leave ours alone. The runes were used for meditation, just like Catholics use a rosary, but they were also used kind of how the Tibetans use the sacred sounds. Om, mane, padme, om. Okay, imagine now if instead of 4 of those sounds, you have 33 of these, which describe all different conditions of mind, conditions of the cosmos, states of being, and humanity's reaction to them, and the actual disposition of forces, great unseen forces moving through our reality at several levels. That is the nature of the runes. The runes are to be said and felt. And as you say them, they actually vibrate different energy centers of the body. Each has its own vibration in terms of tone, in terms of note, in terms of inflection. So they are that which opens a portal for meditation. They give you, how should I say it, quite a buzz. We have the same, as I said, the cognitive meditations and 2 other types of spiritual practices. One is Stav, and there's actually a Norwegian who has restarted teaching again, who came from a very old family that had kept it hidden from during the long Christian interregnum. We're just now coming out into the open again in the last few decades. Stav is the art of stick fighting, both the long stick, the short stick, and hand-to-hand fighting. If you would like to see what Army combatives looks like, go back and pick up Renaissance fighting manuals, and you'll see it all. They're all holds that later end up being called Jiu-Jitsu, Judo, right there, written in the 14th century in Germany and Switzerland. Mercenaries that practiced it, sailors that practiced it on various colonial ships took it all over the world. Just like in about 200 BC, the Han Emperor ordered a bunch of Nordic mercenaries into China, and they brought with them certain fighting skills. The rough imitation of those skills is what you find in Kung Fu. The original is what was used by the Vikings. For instance, at the port of Algeciras, where 100 ships attacked a fortress with 100,000 Moorish defenders and sacked the city. By the way, I'm no fan of the Viking. It was totally degenerate behavior. I don't support it. But nobody can deny their military prowess. It was a great misuse of that power, though, I will say that. So that is part of the tradition. The Danubians are a bit different. The Danubians are the practices of spiritual and physical regeneration. And when I say regeneration, I don't mean necessarily the face and hair. Your hair may still turn white, as in my case, or gray in the case of yours. It is the process of keeping your vitality at all ages. As any of you have learned or read the book, and many of you have, or those who will read it in the future, we ran into a very peculiar fellow who had taught me 20-something years earlier when we were hiking the Rockies. He was 82. And he was almost running up and down the Rockies, just fun. Okay? That's what they allow you to do. You don't have to age the way people do here. If you discipline your diet and you discipline your lifestyle and you live with purpose, the body does not age in the same way. And if you deliberately channel into your body energies, subtle energies, etheric energies, celestial energies, chthonic energies, which we do consciously and deliberately through the Danubians, you will live much, much longer. You can even find old Hilrisningar, which is where it was carved into petroglyphs on the walls of canyons in Norway and other places, pictures of people doing this. You can find it in ancient drinking horns, which archaeologists have in museums in various places, which show people doing this way, 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 way back there. So that's a bit about where the sources of our power are, the sources of our learning are, and the sacred scripture. You want to take topic number 3?
Thank you. I'm going to need to run as soon as this topic completes. You'll be in great hands with Mr. Breckmann. Thankfully, we are not another universalist religion. The world cannot take even one of them, much less 3 or 4 bashing armies destroying local cultures around the world. Our religion is not for all people. It's not just that we're not universalist, it's just that everybody chooses, and we believe that the religions go with our genetics. People of the North would tend to be a different kind of people than people that live in the South, just by geography, just by where a group of people grow. And there are genetic traits with different races. That's considered racism today. We're not racists. Racism today is really something that destroys every race. One size fits all. And who we are is trying to become anything we're not. And this is about finding who we are, what fragments of us are left, and going essentially like the salmon back to its stream to find ourselves. I'm grateful that our world is open enough that we can even have this meeting today. All of our people, let's pretend we're all in this little same community, that we believe exactly the same thing, we all have the same gods and the same understanding of the faiths. We're still not going to agree on everything. My experience, your experience is going to be different. Our parents will have taught us differently. And sometimes a child just growing up in a family thinks differently than their parents. We allow that for each other. And our thoughts change. You know, we keep evolving. Our cosmology itself is living and evolving. This list is not the way any person 100 years ago would have defined Norse cosmology. It's not that it's not the same, but it's made for today. It's just organized because our thoughts are different today. We believe that it's transforming and it's developing. If a concept no longer serves us, we'll just toss it aside. We're not wedded that we have to believe a certain way. There's times you'll find something that you've believed all your life really isn't healthy for you. And that's what we toss aside. It doesn't mean the person next to us doesn't still believe a different way. We recognize our own right to our sacred space, peaceful neighborhoods, observation of the seasons, and lands that represent our way. The seasons educate us. Spring turning into summer summer where you gather and you know that winter's coming. It's an organic kind of religion. Our need for space is very important because if you're in the middle of a city, it's harder to meditate. If you've got a lot of things, honking horns and sirens and lights, a schedule that's too frantic and too many people, just the quiet and the space that one needs is a challenge. That's why sometimes when we get up in the middle of the night and just go outside, you know, it's quiet. We are within our faith, all classes. I use words that are harder to understand, but there's nobles, there's priests, there's rulers, there's kings, there's Vidkar, there's priest magicians, healers, seers, skilled labor, soldiers, merchants, thralls, unskilled labor, carls, people that work with their hands, people that work with their heads. Doesn't mean one doesn't do. To work with your hands does not mean you're not working with your heads or spiritual. But there's some that do different. You just recognize that we're all different. And sometimes one person has a skill that another does not. And that's not a problem. As a community, as a fabric, we have what we need. Thank you very much.
Sure, please do.
George will have a few more words to say, and then he will take care of the questions for Isákaun because she's on the way to the airport. She has to be on a 6:30 flight, so they're waiting for her out there now. George, go ahead.
Okay. Our relationship with the earth, animals, and nature is one of partnership. We see ourselves in symbiosis. We don't see man as dominating nature. We see ourselves as merely a participant in the dance, not the one calling the tune, you know. Conversation out there. We respect all of these animals and nature as living, intelligent beings, some of whom are much wiser than we are and can teach us when possible. We partner with the animals, trees, rocks, and water, and respect that other life is its own life and follows its own rules and should not be subservient to us. We do not believe in world or other domination. At the same time, our ethic is not to allow parasites or predators to suppress us or live off us. And as individuals, we say the same thing. Try to live harmlessly, but be prepared to defend yourself against those who would offend you or would parasitize you. And whether those beings are off-world or off-dimension or here. Same. Punk's a punk, even if it's not dimension. Right. We believe we must be responsible. Keep our waterways clean, our air clean, our populations low enough that we can enjoy the spaces natural to us and live in harmony with it. We recognize that all people are not alike, that one size does not fit all, and it violates all people to artificially push the same global monoculture to think that we should have a McDonald's at every corner throughout the globe, for example, or a Walmart at every corner, destroying the local commerce. We consider a violation, a sacred violation of cultures which should be respected in their individuality and separateness. Now, let me explain. We are programmed, we are brainwashed to think that when I say separateness, I'm talking about hostility or hatred, division. And that's the image Hollywood gives you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you have your community over here that believes in cats, and you hate the way dogs bark at night, wake you up, and tear up the furniture, and they don't dig a hole and bury it, they leave it right on the rest. Got this other community over here that love dogs, and in our world, that's cool. You know, you can have a community for each. And there's really no reason for them to argue or, if you will, give a pun, fight like cats and dogs. It just doesn't have to be that way. You know, we can live in containment and separation and develop our own genius in our own ways. We don't have to import people from Sri Lanka here to improve life in Sri Lanka. In fact, we have a very limited carrying capacity in this country. And if we bring in 138 million more people, as the current immigration laws are allowing to happen, and both administrations are encouraged to happen because the big business benefits from cheap labor to displace American labor, all of you, and replace you with somebody, a foreign origin, who will work for less often under the table. I'm sorry, this is reality here. It's not racism to say that let's help them bloom where they are. Let's help them develop where they are. Let's do what we can in terms of foreign assistance, foreign aid, development aid, and help them upgrade their own standard of living. Because all we're going to do by overtaxing our own air, our own water resources, our own transportation, our own infrastructure, our own hospitals, our own schools, which we're already overburdened and we can't keep up with, is destroy the quality of life here. When we have as many people as India did in 1960, we will have the same, and we're headed toward it by the end of the century. 500 million will have the same standard of living they did in 1960. Do we want that? You know, and that's not political. That's a matter of sacred respect for the earth. Overstamping the earth with too many feet is not respect. It's degradation of the earth. It's the fouling of the earth for human greed, and that's all it is. And this includes the greed of someone who could have had 3 kids and had 12, you know, because they just didn't want to stop, or who overgrazed and destroyed what should have been fertile savanna in Eastern Africa, and because of overgrazing, giving, here, Mustafa gets 12 goats as his dowry when he marries Arabella. Fine, nice, quaint local custom 1,000 years ago when the population was much smaller. You do it today, what do you get? Those 14 goats eat 20 acres a day. So what do? You go from savanna to a desert. And that desert, folks, is man-made, and it's spreading due to the wrong land practices. And the UN acknowledges this. Local experts in those countries acknowledge it. Getting people to change behavior at a local level, an individual level, is very hard to do. There's always that cultural inertia. There is here, as everywhere. So we recognize the need for all of us, all our cultures, to live in harmony. Take care of our own kids, have fathers at home. All of that is part of our tradition. We eschew the degrading belief. We believe in evolution and transformation. We do not believe in original sin. We think that that degrades people and assumes that humanity are naturally bad. We don't think people are naturally bad. We think people are neutral. We can make of ourselves what we want to be. Helpful toward each other, kind toward each other, or the opposite. It's all a matter of developing the character, the respect for one another, the ability to heal, help, trade fairly with one another. And these are choices we all make, individually and collectively. I guess you could say that in a nutshell is our theology, or a lot of it. We respect that each has choice. No one is forced to live honestly or with good character or in the light. But we nurture one another, try to lead others toward it without forcing it, and hope that energy will meet energy. When she used the word universalistic earlier, I'd like to define a bit what that means. We're a tribal faith. We don't claim to have the answers for everybody. I don't think that a way of life that originated in prehistoric Scandinavia necessarily can be taken and overstamped onto Japan. I have absolutely no desire to ever send a mercenary anywhere, even when we were populous, when there were many of us in Northern Europe. We might send trading ships. Occasionally when there were wars, we sent raiding ships. The one thing we never sent anywhere was missionaries. There were no holy wars. There was never any point you can show me in history where Druids warred against Odinists. And the reason it didn't happen is because there was nothing in either faith that said that, or Wiccans, that said, gee, I'm Wiccan and I've got to go force you to be Wiccan. It wasn't there. The word infidel didn't exist for either of those 3 faiths that were common in the Western world. So just think what we would have missed. The Crusades, and the Crusade before that one, where Abu Bakr, Muhammad's nephew, goes through Africa, wipes out all the indigenous cultures, destroys all of the idols, destroys all of the temples. And it's just odd to me to see people thinking, well, I'm a black American, I resonate with Islam, realizing Islam stamped out your culture in the 8th century. It wiped a bloody swath across all of African region. It was only the regions it didn't occupy that remained as they are in isolated pockets. this was a universalistic religion. When you say, basically, when you make this, I don't care what faith you are, this is for the whole world, you give yourself a license to, for holy reasons, for the good of mankind, to go and stomp out the other God, or my God's going to stomp yourself if you in the afterlife if you don't agree with me. We don't make statements like, we think rather that people kind of choose their own afterlife destiny and they shape it by what they expect. If you really want to be in hell, you may get something like that, you know. It doesn't have to be, but if enough of you believe in it, you can kind of create it, you know. Reality is very plastic, and we as humans are magical beings who do tend to shape it, which is why courses like this work, because they show you how to shape it positively. Well, folks, appreciate being able to share some observations of us through. We could go on for hours. I'm not going to do that. I'm sure people have questions. So.
Yeah, I mean, what you were talking about, Henry Stevens and his experience, I didn't quite get that about what kind of meditation thing was he doing?
Well, he was doing the save, which is where you, oh, okay, here's one.
What do you call it? How do you spell that? I'm just.
S-E-I-D-R.
S-E-I-D-R.
By the way, anybody who wants follow-up information, they're right here. Please feel to take one. It's just, they give you places to go to read more if you're curious about anything that we were talking about here today. Okay, here's one. I'll read one. I don't know why she picked this particular one. This one's fairly long. Without ideas is drawn by the fates, and inner sight to experience, the Gunnar warrior, invents in every instant, unencumbered by thought. Without knowing, everything shines new every moment. Without knowing, all is lived, not thought into being. Without knowing, all is fresh, and the day's path to stream is yet filled, with surprise, with wonder. Patience to the hunter, his pursuit, quiet treading, the fisher folk of silent waves, and sun on water sea. The Gunnar, he by careful movement given, invents each moment, invents his life anew. So this particular one invites us to look at the immediacy and freshness of experience which the predator has, your cat, as you see her stalking in the backyard. Something like that. It's a primal level of understanding nature, and each one of these, and our own natures too, invites us to look at a particular aspect of life, of human experience, to relive it, encapsulate it. After doing this for a while, what he found was, every night when he was asleep, he was going to another reality, and basically, rather than having dreams, he was totally, lucidly awake, and he woke up remembering where he'd been, what he was doing, and he was a little bit tired from it. It's like, wow, I remember where I was. If you ever want to remember your dreams, you may really not want to remember your dreams. And they weren't unpleasant. It's just, it was like life never stopping. Going here, where he lives in California, going somewhere else off world, and living this whole real existence there.
Was he using the brain devices too when he slept?
Not at the time. No, at the time he was just doing the meditations. He later did get some brain machines. Yes, ma'am.
You talked about the ruins and how to meditate.
Right.
33 or 30.
Yes, the 33 Northumbrian ruins are the
Where
ones
do we
I've
get
personally
those
used.
from? Like, is there...
Well, actually, when you go to the bottom of it, you can actually download the full thing on the runes and how to use them from the Gamma Ray Statement website. I don't necessarily agree with everything on the Gamma Ray Statement website. I'm not a very political person. It is, but you know, it's got some great sacred information on it. And as far as how to do it, it's very simple. You can just chant the rune. You can look, you read the meaning. Very simple. It's a primal sound, like oh, sa, you know, the sound of the primal breath. Very, very simple. Again, you have 4 sounds. We have 33. Yes, Om is a good approximation. Very similar. The Divine Mother in the crowd, but yeah.
Repeat what you just said about the sound of the final breath.
Ah, well, yes. The sound of primal breath is what I said.
Oh, you said
not
primal. I
final
thought you said primal.
No, there is a final breath. I've heard it a few times.
Yeah,
No, I was speaking of the primal. P-R-I-A.
Okay, all right.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
All right. Well, you know, when you speak of the Crusades and all the innocent blood killed in the name of God, which is the biggest and the most blasphemous thing that perhaps we could anyone could ever even step up and do, is to take another life in the name of God. But when we focus on, and I believe, is this the author to the book? You put great faith in what Yahshua's, in the words of Yahshua. And I would really like to talk to you about some of those things. But if he said that all the law could be summed up and you could love thy neighbor as thyself, where could the justification ever have been in the Crusades or anything that the ones that are...
Well, to answer you very simply, many times in the same New Testament that you're quoting in that particular verse from John, you will find many times in the New Testament where he reaffirms the law and the prophets and the whole of the Old Testament. Okay? And when you affirm the Old Testament, you're affirming the same Yahweh who orders Joshua to commit what today we would call genocide and ethnic cleansing. The same David who takes 1,000 Egyptian prisoners of war out into the desert and tortures them to death.
But when that covenant was fulfilled,
yeah.
Okay, and we have the New Testament now. Okay, that was done.
But wait a minute, we're still reporting the same God, right? Do we agree?
Not necessarily.
Well, then where does he change place? That's
Based
never
on
explained in your scriptures.
Okay.
We're still referring to him the same way. Same guy in charge. Now he sends his son. But he's the same guy.
Yahshua, yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I'm speaking of for Joshua.
But
speaking of Yahweh.
Well, you know, essentially
I'm still not out of the picture.
Not at all. But
This is kind of brand.
The light of the well weighs 185 pounds.
So,
I'm sorry with this. Okay. Well,
when we
maybe
get to
later.
Yahweh, what we have.
I think what he was reading is the Father Confusers.
Yeah.
Right.
But he's talking about
This is
not
Jim.
contact.
I'm sorry. Okay, my bad.
Yeah, there's
So that's where the,
I'm sorry. Excuse me,
that's
man.
where the confusion comes.
So I've been.
I kind of feared he was talking about you instead of me, but
I
that's cool.
apologize.
That's cool.
I'll be quiet.
And having read his book and having great respect for it, I was quite free.
I got respect for
to
all.
answer.
I just question.
But basically what you're looking at is several times in the Old Testament, his visage is awful. It's terrible. He is surrounded by smoke. He comes up from the burning bush. There's the smoke of sulfur. Nowadays, we call that a reptilian, okay, in ufology, and that's pretty much dead on. In the old days, we called those, in the Indian faith, Kumaras, and we were convinced these weren't nice. They were very persuasive. They could pretend to be, quote, God, end quote, pretend that there was just one being supposed to be in charge of your planet. Hey, I'm the dictator, listen to me. You don't follow what I say, boom, down on you. Okay, I guess our worldview differs this way. Just try to answer your question.
I'm sorry, my bad.
No, man, you're good. You haven't done anything wrong at all. You've got a curious mind. I can see it in you. You've got a
Great thirst for God.
You've got a deep blue mental aura. So you're a great deep thinker. I can tell that right away. You read a heck of a lot. It's good to stay up late reading. That's all fine. But you want to be a true believer, you want to surrender to something. We're not going to offer you surrender. What we offer is hardship and struggle and evolution. It's not all that comforting to people, but that's what we offer.
Very good statement.
Struggle for the light upward. But what you'll find when you look at all these things is that you can either assume that our multiverse is ruled by a dictator up here with kind of a nasty temper and is really arbitrary. I mean, you know, he tells this guy to offer his daughters up to an angry mob and they're gang raped. He knocks one of them up, and then he's taken off world in a ship that descends from the sky. He doesn't even have to die. He's rewarded. And his name's Elijah, by the way. It's right there in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
And, you know, we would kind of consider this guy a child molester and a real low today. And the Old Testament heroes are full of people like this. And this is who this God is rewarding. Not my God, folks. Sorry. Instead, our world, our view of cosmology is that there are all these intelligences, the ones we today call ETs. Our people have known about them forever. We call what you call today the Greys, the Yus Alfar, the Light Elves, the ones people call blues, like Whitley Strieber wrote about. They're the blues. We call them Dokar Alfar, dark elves. Each were clever. They weren't necessarily harmful, but you really didn't want to deal with them unless you were really cool, spiritually strong.
One Whistlers? Do they have a name?
Pardon?
One Whistlers?
Oh, wind whistlers. Yes, yes, the wind spirits, indeed. That would be the Deseer.
So they do have a name.
Yes, they do indeed.
Well, I was going to ask, what is your take on the Book of Enoch? How does that play into
Well,
all
I think the
this?
Book of Enoch was
Repeat
just...
the question,
the Book of
please,
Enoch.
because they won't have heard of that. Can you repeat repeat
Yes,
the question.
he asked,
What is your
what is
take
my
on
take on the Book of Enoch?
Book of Enoch?
I think there are a lot of apocryphal works which were simply rejected by the Council of Nicaea on very arbitrary grounds. By all rights, since the Book of Enoch is very, very old, it should have been included in the New Testament. The reason it wasn't included in the Bible that emerged from the concordance at Nicaea was simply because it contradicted many of the other accounts. So what you have is a bunch of contradictory stories about an artificial character. What we do know, in fact, is that the character called Jesus, everything in the New Testament is found much, much earlier in pagan lore. I mean, who is the fisher of men? Well, that's Apollo. There he is, standing on the backs of two dolphins at Delphi, holding this net, and who's in the net? Men, not fish. Gee, where did they get that? And that was way before the Christian era, of course, that existed. So everything in there is a plagiarism. And if you begin with plagiarism, you're beginning with crime. You're basing your faith on a crime. You're basing it on a violation of other people's faiths. So how do you expect any good to come from it? Now, I respect any indigenous faith. I respect the people who believed in those dolphins and believed they brought them to Delphi. I have no problem dealing with any indigenous faith. This is an artificial faith designed to control other people and conquer the world. Christianity, Islam, and Judaism are all political ideologies whose primary purpose is conquest. Ours is not conquest. It's personal evolution. That's probably a good place to be. But does anybody have any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering how much of this is woven into Celtic mythology.
Oh, very similar.
It's
ma'am.
all.
Celtic theology is very similar. Sometimes it's just a change of the names. What we would call Odinsager, a place where the good people were not great inventors like Louis Pasteur, who could go to one place, or great warriors, but were just good people. What we would call Odinsager, they would call Summerland. Sometimes, but the cosmology is almost identical.
Almost. And we believe, well, speaking as in archaeology and theology, that Celtic evolved on its own, but before the Nordic invasions. However, nothing has evolved on its own. I don't think.
Yeah. Well, I think
Again, please repeat her question, because I don't think
she
she's
was
seeing it.
asking if the Celtic belief system of the Celtic peoples, and we have to clarify where it was. Basically, in those days, it would have been France, northern
France,
Spain, say Galicia, Brittany,
Northern Germany.
certainly a bit of northern Germany, pretty much Teutonic culture area. You'd have been talking basically the whole of the British Isles in those days. Did this evolve on its own? And I would say, yes, it did. It certainly was an indigenous faith of the era. You've had a lot of transitional places, though. You'd found in Galicia, you would find in what is today Denmark, you would find in what is today Belgium, that there was kind of a mixture of Odinic and, of Teutonic and Celtic. They were just slightly different cultures that, lived side by side for thousands of years.
Any other questions?
There was a mention of soul reclamation.
Yes.
Claiming soul parts. What is that?
Okay, well, that's going to be her book, which is about her personal spiritual path. And we right at the bottom of this have the actual 4-part radio show that Eddie Middleton and I did with her, which is very interesting listening. Any of you have internet can listen to it. Her story is a one-of-a-kind story. It's riveting. It's like reading Tolstoy or Dostoevsky or one of the great Russian authors. Only it's all true. It's all absolutely real. Like reading Dr. Zhivago, the female point of view. She's a remarkable woman to have done all that, come through all that. Reclamation. What do we mean by that? Regaining one's sense of meaning from meaninglessness, regaining a sense of purpose, overcoming the damage to oneself and one's self-image due to years of violation. Something that we who work in as healers do confront in the spiritual aspect of healing, and need to be aware of. We're not just healing the body. If we don't heal the soul, where the person has been severely damaged, abused, maybe started life with severe child abuse, how can, they're going to keep recurring symptoms in the physical body if we don't fix it at the spiritual level and pull that into the physical. If all of you were healers understand that principle. See all the line. Yeah, it's good.
One more
That's
question.
soul reclamation.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we went from to love thy neighbor as thyself to Christianity being
An oppressive force.
yes,
And
yes.
universal.
Now, would that not be the manipulation?
That is
of
the
it?
manipulation, right? Because of course it was never, what it basically was saying was, love your fellow Christian who believes exactly as you do, who looks like you, as yourself, unless of course.
Your neighbor,
unless,
not
of
just
course,
your Christian,
but
your
wait a minute,
neighbor.
But wait a minute, dude, if you choose to be Catholic and I'm Protestant or vice
Right.
versa, then we got 40 years war. We're going to kill off half of the population of Germany in that 40 years war. And we had 100 years war. Again, just about Catholic versus Protestant. Go look it up, folks.
All right, can I ask you this, Melissa?
This is worse than
If-
Shia and Sunni.
Since we come out of the womb, the most important thing, at least in our function, we think, is to provide for self. Would not the biggest test of this world and realm be to be selfless and to care more for others than self? And would that not in itself give us the power of God in all things by caring more for others than ourselves?
You have a false dichotomy, my friend. When we care for ourselves, we do it. For others, we do it for selfish reasons because it makes us feel good. Meditate on that. They're inextricably interwoven.
We can carry on the questions here later. Want to thank George for being with us and Isákaun for being with us. And partially to answer your questions, you know, there was no Bible for 325 years after Jesus. And it was in there that about 50% of the Christian population wasn't anything related to Orthodox Christianity. It was a totally different animal. And what you were saying is correct for those folks. It was the ones who came after them that where you found what he's talking about being created in the years between 325 and the Council of Constantinople 500 years later. That's when all the dogma was created. And we can talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I want to remind you that Mike is going to do another song. You don't have to jump up and run. Mike, come ahead. And then George will be around for a few minutes. He's going to be headed back to Huntsville shortly. But so we'll be around and you can talk and you can get something to drink or coffee or whatever. And thank you very much for joining us. Our guest next week is Gabrielle Noel. She is a medium, an intuitive, a clairvoyant, and she has a very good, Abigail, what did I say?
Oh, God, don't miss her.
What did I say?
You said Gabrielle, she'll
Oh,
have that.
no, Abigail, Abigail Noel.
You will,
And
you will love
then
it.
the week after that, it's Walid Sakan. He teaches Islamic studies. He's an artist and a writer. Very, very interesting to meet both of these upcoming guests. Thank you.